This and what the week ahead may hold, let's go to Canberra and speak to political reporter Latika Burke.
Thank you, and I'm joined in Melbourne by Kelvin Thomson, a Parliamentary Secretary for the Government. Kelvin Thomson, thanks for joining us this morning on Weekend Breakfast.
You're welcome, Latika.
In 2010, you voted for Julia Gillard because you felt that caucus under Kevin Rudd had become a rubber stamp. Now, Wednesday's vote was a secret ballot, but can I ask who you voted for and why?
Oh, you can ask, but I haven't been in the business of disclosing my vote. It is clear that there was a very significant shift to Kevin Rudd from the last time the caucus had a ballot. There were 31 votes for him, and this time there were 57. So clearly many caucus members shifted their support to Kevin Rudd. And I think the reason for that was that people believed that we had a better prospect of being re-elected with a change of leader, and that it was our obligation to the Labor Party and indeed to the Australian people to fight to protect the good things that we've done, things like the Marine National Reserves, things like the increase in superannuation, which is starting to come into effect from the 1st of July, things like disability insurance, the Gonski reforms, the school kids bonus. In many areas we have done good work, and we need to protect that work at the next election, and it was increasingly clear as the election date approached that we weren't in a position to do that.
And so were you one of those MPs?
Well, Latika, I don't want to fuel that kind of talk by talking about how I voted, and we've talked too much about leadership, frankly, and people talking about these things doesn't help. I think that people have been very positive about the move to Kevin Rudd and believe that this will make Labor competitive at the next election. That's the sort of message that's been coming through to my office. And
in just the last 2 days, have you received those messages, have you?
Well, we've had a steady drumbeat, if you like, of people saying that we needed a change of leader. We observed that at street stalls. Indeed, I had a campaign committee a couple of weeks ago, and a couple of the older Italian members at the campaign committee said, you know, is there any chance of a return to Kevin Rudd? So there has been a steady drumbeat of this for quite some time, but certainly we've had that message in the electorate office in the last couple of days as well, with people coming in to volunteer their support.
Are you worried, Kelvin Thomson, that caucus is going to be a rubber stamp once more under Kevin Rudd?
I think, Latika, that Kevin has indicated in his first couple of statements that he's learnt lessons from his first period as leader, that he wishes to be consultative and to go through proper cabinet and ministerial processes. And it is worth noting that some of the most successful political leaders of the previous century were people who hadn't covered themselves in glory in their first outing, people like Sir Robert Menzies, Bill Clinton, who was Governor of Arkansas, was tossed out and then became an extremely successful president, Winston Churchill and others. So I think that people who are given a second chance often learn from their previous period.
Now, in 2007, you were removed from the shadow front bench because of a reference you'd signed in 2000 for Tony Mockbell. You've since been promoted by Julia Gillard to the position of Parliamentary Secretary. Do you believe you're now qualified for the ministry?
Oh, that's for others to judge, Latika. I don't give leaders public or, for that matter, private advice on what they should do in relation to me or others of my colleagues. I've had some good opportunities in the Parliament to serve in a range of roles, and I've enjoyed the opportunities I've had in the last few months as Parliamentary Secretary for Trade, but the question of who serves as ministers and in what capacity is, until further notice, a matter for the leader.
Now, Mr Rudd yesterday raised the prospect of a Tony Abbott government potentially triggering a war with Indonesia over the turn-back boats policy. Did he go too far?
Latika, I was very pleased that the Prime Minister called the opposition's policy on turn back the boats for the fraud that it is. They have this glib slogan saying they will turn the boats back without having any conceivable way of making this work, given that it requires cooperation with Indonesia and given that the Indonesians have been quite clear that that cooperation will not be forthcoming. And when they get challenged on this, they run away. Tony Abbott refused to raise it with the Indonesians when he was there, and when Julie Bishop was questioned about it, she verbaled the Indonesians. So the truth is, they have been seeking to skate over this matter with a glib policy slogan which will not work, and I am pleased that Kevin Rudd called it for the fraud that it is.
But when they are challenged about it, the opposition also says they've done this towback policy before. Now, it didn't trigger a war then. Why would it trigger a war now?
Well, it's not a question of triggering a war. What it is exposing this policy as a fraud which has not been properly thought through or worked through. It does require the cooperation of the Indonesians to work if it is done in a significant way. It was not done in a significant way previously. The number of boats has, as everyone is well aware, increased substantially, and the nature of those boats and the nature of the people smuggling operation, as Bob Carr recently identified, has changed. So,
and do you believe on that there is a need now to tighten the refugee test?
Well, I think that we certainly need to review the policies that we've had in the light of the changing nature of asylum seekers and people coming by boat and the way in which the people smuggling business has operated. So I think what Bob Carr has said about this recently is correct.
And just finally, there is some suggestion that the Rudd government could bring forward the floating price on the carbon tax to perhaps 2014. Is that a move that you would support?
What there needs to be is proper and careful consideration of these issues, and I think it's clear that there will be proper and careful consideration of these issues. But the elements of our determination to reduce carbon emissions are clear and will remain. That is to say, we will continue to have a carbon price. We will support a mandatory renewable energy target of 20% by 2020. We'll support the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. We'll support an emissions reduction target. So all of these things are important and demonstrate that we are serious about tackling climate change.
OK, Kelvin Thomson, we're out of time, but thank you so much for joining us on Weekend Breakfast this morning.
Good to talk with you, Latika.